for hopping on team call. We were just talking about how many amazing, exciting things are happening this month, extra referral bonuses, and exciting things coming next week with changes that corporate's launching. So fun. So thanks for hopping on team call tonight. I'm so excited to have Gina Intoppa sharing. As we traveled together, she clued me in that she actually used to teach these decluttering classes through her adult ed in Chicago. I think Chicago, right in town. Yeah. And she'd be going to people's homes and help them declutter. And I was like, oh my gosh, so amazing. And I thought, like Laura wrote in our post announcement, you know, your house and your home life does affect your overall health as well. And so I thought this was so important. Like, we are the health and happiness company, and it does not just, you know, it's not just a one thing deal. Like, it's your whole environment. So I thought this was perfect. I was so happy Gina offered up her knowledge, and I can't wait to hear all of the tips, Gina girl.
Let me unmute. Awesome. Okay, well, like Darcy said, I'm originally from the Chicago suburbs. About 5 years ago, our family decided to embrace minimalism. And that's not a big thing, really. All it means is that we are intentionally promoting the things that we value and just getting rid of all of the distractions. So adopting this minimalist mindset not only allowed us to clear space in our home, but it really allowed us to rethink how we were spending our money and our time. It allowed us to dream about what our lives could look like. And then shortly after, we sold our house, as a lot of you know, and we moved our family into an RV. We've been traveling with our kids for the last 18 months, which is how I was fortunate enough to meet Darcy. So it really has made a lot of our goals and our dreams come true. So I would love to share with you some of the tips that I've learned. We downsized from about 1,200 square feet to 200 square feet. So I have had a lot of experience decluttering and getting rid of stuff, and happy to share those tips with you. Okay, what does it mean exactly to declutter like a minimalist? We've heard a lot about decluttering. You might have seen the Marie Kondo special on Netflix. But really, it's not about subtracting for the sake of getting rid of things, but really about clearing the things that we're not using and that we don't need, so that we have more time, more money, more freedom to focus on the things that we do. So why is this difficult? Because if you've ever tried to declutter, you might have hit a wall, you might have had a hard time. And the truth is, the act of decluttering itself is not difficult, but it's the mental hurdles that we have to overcome to get the outcome that we want. So it's very similar to our Plexus business, right? The work that we do isn't hard. It's the shift in mindset that is really the challenge. And so we really need to acknowledge those hurdles that as they come up, and we have to have strategies to overcome them. So that's really what we're going to be talking about today. What are the hurdles that come up as you're decluttering, and what are some of the strategies that you can use to break through and get rid of the stuff that you don't need? So the first thing I want to talk about is the endowment effect. Now, this is a studied phenomenon. Now, I'm going to try not to talk too fast, you guys. I'm at 9,000 feet elevation today, which is not typical for me. So I'm like trying not to lose my breath. So if I take a break, that's why. But the endowment effect is the tendency for us to overvalue the things that we own. So there have been a lot of studies on this. One of the studies, they had participants fill out a survey. They gave half of them a coffee mug and half of them a chocolate bar. And then after a little bit of time, they gave them the option of switching. And what they found was it doesn't matter if people had the coffee mug first or the chocolate bar. They valued the thing that they had first, and they were not willing to give it up. And this really explains why we overvalue the things that we own, why it's harder for us to get rid of things once we have them. This endowment effect is very powerful. This is why companies like Stitch Fix send you a box of clothing and say, just send back what you don't want. Or mattress companies say, try out this mattress for 60 days. And then if you don't like it, you can return it, right? Because they know once we have these things in our possession, we're likely to hang on to them. So the interesting thing about this is that cultures that share resources, so a lot of tribal cultures where they don't own individual possessions, they don't exhibit this endowment effect. So it is something that we can work through. We have been conditioned to think this way. And it's just important to recognize as you're decluttering, you're probably going to come across things and feel like an unnormal sense of like, attachment to it, right? And so that's where this is coming from. It's just important to recognize that your brain is going to want to hang on to things, and it's your job to kind of do the work to give yourself a different story. So let's dive in to mindset with the 6 reasons you're having difficulty letting go of stuff. Okay, the number 1 reason, it has sentimental value. Now, when I get to these items, I want you to know that it's okay to hold on to items that are special to you, but not every item that was ever special to you, right? The idea behind these items is that they help us recall memories, they help us recall people in our lives that were important. It's not the object itself that we're valuing often, it's the memory that we attach to it. So when we come across these items, it's important to ask yourself, will I remember this person or this event without this item? If you will, it's okay to let it go. Or if you have multiple items that hold a single memory, maybe you have a bunch of stuff from your prom, or you have souvenirs from a vacation, right? Pick the one that's the most valuable to you and let the rest go. You don't need to have 20 different things to remember your Hawaii vacation. Maybe it's just that one special item that brings up those memories. The other thing that I love is documenting. So it's often the story that's important to us, not the item. So maybe we take an item, I can make a video, I can talk about why this cup is so special and important to me, I can tell the story of it, and I can keep the video and get rid of the item, right? Because we're really just keeping the story, we don't need to keep the stuff. So the number 2 reason why you're not getting rid of your stuff is you think you may need it again. Is anybody guilty of this? So this was me. I was always holding on to stuff because I might need it. Even if it's something that I never used, I never took it out of the closet, just having it made me somehow feel like I was prepared. And what I want to say to that is needing something is different than potentially needing something, right? Don't become a storehouse for an uncertain future. If you have not used something and you don't know when you're going to use it, you probably don't need it, right? There's something called the 80-20 rule. And what it says is that 80% of the utility we get comes from 20% of the stuff that we own. So if you were to like heat map your house and see which of your stuff you were using, you're probably only using 20% of your stuff 80% of the time, right? So it's okay to let go of those things, right? The other thing that I look at is, I call it my 20-20 rule. If I can replace something for $20 or less, and I can get it within 20 minutes of my home or on Amazon, I just let it go, right? There's no need to hold on to things that you can easily replace, especially if it's not something that you're using and you don't have any anticipation to use it in the future. The next reason why you're not getting rid of your stuff is you've spent a lot of money on it. And I know we're all guilty of this. And what is important is to recognize that just because you spent money on it doesn't necessarily mean it still has the value, the dollar value that you paid for it. So ask yourself, how much would you pay for it if you didn't already own it? If you wouldn't buy it right now, then you probably don't need it. Consider what that space and mental freedom is worth to you, right? If you're reorganizing closets and you keep coming across the same item and you're not using it, what would it mean to get rid of that item? The money has been spent, right? If the item is reminding you every time you look at it, oh my gosh, I spent way too much money on this, I haven't used it. Give yourself permission to let it go, right? And if it makes you feel better, turn around and sell it, try and recoup some of that money, but never hang on to things just because you spent a lot of money on them. Okay, the number 4 reason, you intended to use it. So like this is hobbies that you decided to take on. Maybe you bought a fancy dress for just because, maybe you bought exercise equipment that you're not using, right? Remember that we're not subtracting for the sake of subtracting. We're not getting rid of stuff just to get rid of it. But if you are not using something and it is just taking up space in your home, you might want to think about what you could do with that instead. Maybe you can sell it and pick an experience that you'd rather enjoy, or an activity that, maybe you already have a hobby and you want to add to that hobby. Think about how clearing those things and getting rid of them might make more time and space for you to focus on those things. Number 5, it was a gift from someone special. So this is a super, super hard one. And when I come across things like this, I have to recognize that the love that I feel for that person, that my gratitude is not housed in that item, right? That's that endowment effect coming back. I can be grateful for the gift. I can love the person, but if it's not something that I'm using, I shouldn't be burdened with hanging on to it. And when it's appropriate, You might even want to offer it back to the gift giver, right? Especially moms. If you have a mom like my mom, who's always giving you random things like, oh, look what I picked up at Costco. Look what I got you here. Sometimes I just turn around and say, Mom, you gave me this really nice food dehydrator 6 months ago. It's been sitting in my closet. I haven't used it. I hate to see it go to waste. Would you be hurt if I gave it to somebody that really could use it and love it? Or is there someone that you would like to re-give this to? My mom has never said no. She's always like, oh, yeah, you don't want it? Give it to me. I'll give it to your sister-in-law. She'll take it. So you might want to reconsider giving those things back to people. It also teaches people maybe not to give you things without you asking for them. Another thing you can do is upcycle things into things that are useful. So like if you go on Etsy, you can find quilts from t-shirts and baby clothes, Girl Scout vests. You can find pillows from old shirts, jewelry made out of broken plates, messenger bags made from, service uniforms. There's a lot of things that you can do with these items. If someone's given them to you and they have some value to you, but you're not using them, turn them into something useful. And then you can retain the memory and still be getting some good use out of the item. Finally, if you're struggling with this, right, imagine you had given something to someone that they couldn't use or didn't want, and they were holding on to it out of guilt. What would you advise them to do, right? The intent of a gift is not to burden you. It's not to make you feel bad. So people don't want you to hold on to things that you're not using. So show yourself the same compassion and change the story that you're telling yourself so you can get rid of those items. Okay, the number 6 reason is you don't know where to start, right? Like we've amassed a lot of stuff. I could talk about this for hours. The amount of storage units in the United States, I can't remember the exact statistic, but I think there's enough storage space for every single American to stand underneath storage space. Like we have a ton of stuff, right? So it can be overwhelming. You don't know where to start. Maybe you have a lot of stuff in your house. These are the items that I suggest you jumpstart your decluttering with. Number 1, clothes you don't wear, right? Is it ripped, stained, faded? Would you buy it today? If not, let it go. Sometimes I shop in my own closet. I'll try clothes on again, and I'll ask myself, would I buy this today if it was in the store, right? If the answer is no, then I probably don't want it and I'm gonna get rid of it. Seasonal items that you didn't wear in season. So I know it's a little different with COVID. People weren't going out quite as much, but we're coming out of the winter season. If you live somewhere where you're swapping your clothes out and you're folding up all your sweaters and you come across a pile of stuff that you haven't worn, if you didn't want to wear it this season, you're probably not going to want to wear it next season, right? If it wasn't fashionable enough, if it fits you and you just didn't wear it, you're probably not going to wear it again. Another trick you can do, a lot of people will hang their clothing backwards in the closets, like hang up your hangers backwards. And then as you wear something and wash it, you're going to rehang it back the correct way. So in 6 months, you open your closet and you'll be able to see very clearly what you're wearing and what you're not wearing. And then grab all those things that you're not wearing and donate them. Anything broken, right? I'm guilty of this. Like if you have electronics or things around your house that are broken, ask yourself why you haven't fixed it yet, right? Probably because you're not using it. So make a plan to fix it. And if you're not going to make a plan to fix it, it's time to let it go. Another thing, the unidentifiable objects in your junk drawer, in your kid's toy bin, under the floor mats of your vehicle, right? When we have all of these things, sometimes we have like cords and knobs and screws, and we don't know what they're for. We don't know, where they came from. If you don't know what they're for today, you're probably not going to have more clarity on that 6 months from now. So give yourself permission to let those things go. You can find almost any single part or piece that you need on eBay. So if by chance in the future, you figure out like, oh my gosh, that was the cord to this, you'll probably be able to replace it. Give yourself permission to let those things go. The other thing that clutters up, lotions and potions, like your travel shampoos, half-used toiletries, older broken makeup. So like I used to be super guilty of this. I would be running low on conditioner. I'd go to the store, buy more conditioner, and somehow that new shiny bottle of conditioner just looks so much better than the like used up bottle that I have. So it sits in my shower for 6 months. And then I have all these random, even in my RV, I have all of these random bottles of shampoo. So use those things up or give yourself permission to toss them. You're not using them for a reason, so you can let them go. Lonely items, so your Tupperware with missing lids, unmatched socks, VHS tapes if you don't have a VHS player, right? Those are things that you're not using, they're not bringing any value to you, let them go. The next thing, expired pantry items. That's a big one. Everybody has a lot of stuff in their pantry. And I'm sorry, my things are jumping ahead. Please hold. Okay, my notes are a little funky. Let me scroll back. Oh, okay. Other people's stuff. So if you have adult kids and you're keeping their stuff in your garage or in your home, give it back to them. If you're keeping stuff for your neighbor or your friends, give it back to them. That stuff's just taking up space in your home. Anything that you have double of. This was a big one for me. I had like 6 spatulas. You do not need 6 spatulas. I promise you. Pick your favorite 2, get rid of the rest. And then finally, anything that brings you down. So old love letters, maybe a wedding album from a marriage that's ended, anything that's not bringing you joy, go ahead and get rid of it. So that's how you jumpstart. But once you decide to get decluttering, here's some tips to keep you going. Number 1, be intentional about what you bring in, right? If your basement is flooding, you can't just bail out water. You have to stop it at the source. So if you're not intentional about what you're bringing into your space, you're going to be going through this process again in 6 months, a year, 2 years. Just be really thoughtful about the things that you bring in. This part of the decluttering, I think a lot of us look at the stuff we're getting rid of. We recognize how much money and time was spent on those things. We don't want to make those mistakes again. So just be really mindful about what you're bringing in. Number 2, never organize what you can discard, okay? Organizing is not decluttering. And I think we've all done this where we go through our space and we keep organizing a closet. We keep coming back to items and finding new spots for them or finding new ways to store them. But if you've been organizing the same items over and over and over again, it's time to let those things go. Recognize that you're going to be faced with the same dilemma down the road if you just reorganize and you don't get rid of stuff. And you just really you deserve to enjoy your home and your space the way that you want. So give yourself permission to let go of the guilt and take action. The next tip, go at your own pace, right? Some people are going to be super motivated. They're going to jump in, they're going to have 3 garbage bags before they know it. Other people take time, right? And they're going to really need to think through their items, and that's okay. So go at your own pace. Focus on progress, not perfection. And then start strong. Don't start with your childhood memorabilia. Don't start with things that are emotionally taxing for you to go through, right? You need to work your way up to these things. Start with a project you can easily achieve, build some momentum, and then jump into that more difficult decluttering. I like to start with my linen closet. That was where I started my decluttering project at home. It was really great because it was non-emotional, right? Like I didn't have any feelings about old towels and old sheets. But I got a real sense of satisfaction when I cleared out that space and created some room. And it just made it easier for me to organize other things once I created that space. So figure out what the best project for you to start is that you're going to knock it out of the park, and that's where you should go first. And then finally, have a plan. So I like to set up either bins or bags, one for selling, one for donating, and one for discarding. So the goal is to only touch your things one time. Know where you're going to take them. So as you're going through the house, you're going to grab things, you're going to decide which pile it goes into, and then you're going to have a plan for that pile, right? So you don't want to keep boxes in your garage for 6 months, or if you're like me, where you drive around with stuff in your trunk for a couple months until you make it to the donation place. Have an end time or a timeline in place and really stick to it. So if you're familiar with Marie Kondo, she has, like I said, I think it's still on Netflix. She has something called the KonMari method, and she takes everyone through the same order of decluttering. First is clothes, next is books, third is paper, fourth she calls kimono, which is basically all the other stuff, your kitchen, your garage. And then finally are sentimental items. Like I said, you want to save those things for last. They're going to bring up a lot of emotions. They're the most difficult to declutter and go through. So just make it easy on yourself. Build up those decluttering muscles on some smaller things, and then you can tackle those bigger projects. And declutter in waves. So when I first started my decluttering, I went through the whole house, I collected a bunch of stuff, and then a couple months later, I did it all over again, right? Once I had less stuff, I really started focusing in on what I was using. Like if you have like I said, if you have a favorite spatula that you're using over and over again, and you're always grabbing for that when it's clean, maybe you get rid of some of the extra stuff that you're not moving in that next wave of decluttering. Or maybe you want to go room by room. Maybe you want to start in one room, get that under control, and then move on to the next room, right? It's really all about trying different tactics and finding what works for you. It might be different for everyone. And there's a lot of different things you can do. There's something called the Minimalism Game. So on day 1, you get rid of 1 item. Day 2, you get rid of 2 items, 3 items. And then at the end of 30 days, that's a total of 465 items that you'll have gotten rid of. So that's one way to do it. I shared a fun 30-day worksheet, which if anybody's interested in it, I'd be happy to share it. It just walks you through day by day, stuff you can get rid of each day just to make it easy. Another option is to find a buddy to help, right? So we have a lot of a sentimental attachment to our things, but sometimes having an outside perspective, not your spouse, right? Because they have a vested interest maybe in some of the space that you're going to be clearing by getting rid of stuff. But you bring over a friend, you can talk through some of these things, and they can really help give you some perspective on what you might want to keep and what makes sense to get rid of. Another thing that we did with the kids, so when we moved into our RV, we had an abundance of stuffed animals, and my son had a really, really hard time. So my husband put everything out on the bed and was like, pick 5 that you want to keep. And he was like totally paralyzed. He couldn't do it. So then he said, okay, well, pick 5 that you don't want to keep. And he was still like, couldn't do it. So we started matching them up. Like you have 2 dogs, you have 2 frogs, you have 2 monkeys or whatever. And we did a draft, like, which one's your favorite? That's the one that we keep. The other one goes in the bin. And for some reason, pairing things up in that way just made it so much easier for him to really like hone in on which one he preferred and what he liked. It felt a little bit less overwhelming. You can do that with your own stuff too. So if you need to play these little games with yourself to get rid of stuff, that's totally okay. But the point is to make your decision and move on. How many people have, like, whether it's a garage sale or you're donating stuff, you put stuff in a box, the box sits there maybe a day or 2, and then the next thing you know, either it's you or one of your kids or your spouse, and you're fishing through the box like, oh, well, maybe I don't want to get rid of this, and maybe I want to keep this, right? Don't obsess about a decision that's already made. Be mindful of the things that you're doing that are keeping you stuck in this declutter limbo. Like, are you telling yourself stories that are making you feel guilty? Are you punishing yourself for getting rid of stuff? So like, for instance, if I came across something maybe that my grandmother had given me, if I'm telling myself, oh gosh, grandma gave this to you, she's gone now, this was really special when she gave it to you, right? I'm telling myself a story that is making it really hard for me to make the decision to get rid of this item that deep down I know I really don't need and I'm not using. So change the narrative. Tell yourself, this was from my grandma. I loved her very much. I'm going to have memories of her even if I get rid of this item, right? My memories and my love for my grandma are not housed in this item. So just be mindful of those things. Sometimes you have to change the narrative in your head to help you overcome those obstacles. And then give the item a victory lap if that feels right. If you want to put on your wedding dress and like vacuum your house, or if you want to have a fondue party before you get rid of that fondue set you've never used, or maybe you have your wedding china that's been sitting in storage for 20 years, throw a fancy dinner party. If it makes sense, give that item a victory lap and just enjoy it one more time before you get rid of it. So final thoughts. If you're still feeling overwhelmed, I know it's a lot to dive in and get rid of your stuff. It's years of memories. It's years of money. I know when I first started decluttering and I had these garbage bags of stuff, I swear to you, I went through the stages of grief. Like I was bargaining, I was in denial, I was depressed that I had spent all of this money, right? Like it's a process. So just realize that micro progress is progress. If you only go through your underwear drawer and throw out your old underwear, you're making steps and it's a practice, right? So the more that you do it, the easier it's going to get, the more comfortable you're going to get with getting rid of your stuff. Don't focus on the outcome, right? Sometimes we go into a project and we think, I want to clear this garage. I want everything out of here. But it doesn't always happen like that. So just don't focus on the outcome. Be willing to go through the space. Be willing to take the time to really think through the items. And And then remember your why. It doesn't have to be as dramatic as you want to move into a tiny home, so you have to get rid of all your stuff. Maybe it's just, what would I feel like to sit in this room and not see my kids' toys everywhere, right? Or how would my life be easier if I didn't have all of these kitchen gadgets to find space for, like you're opening your Tupperware drawer and things are falling out, right? Just think about why would this make your life better? Why are you going through the process of getting rid of these things? And just be willing to look into it. So I know I flew through those. It's a bunch of my tips. I'm happy to answer questions if anybody has specific questions.
It's so great. I mean, and I saw everyone's heads nodding just like mine was, because yeah, that's absolutely all the reasons why we don't get rid of things, or we have a hard time, or yeah, it was so spot on, Gina, and such good tips.
Thanks.
Gina, I have a question for you. So I loved everything you said. One thing that I'm really having a hard time with right now is my kids' stuff and them getting rid of their things and not letting it overtake everything in our house. I'm just curious if you have any tips on how to do this with kids. Like, I feel like we declutter like their toys and stuff, at least like a good clean out twice a year. And it's still like a couple weeks later, I'm like, how do we have this much crap? Like I'm just baffled, really. So
no, I get that for sure. I mean, I think, like I said, for starters, really like look at where are these things coming in. Like, are you going to the dollar spot with the kids every time you're at Target? Are you accepting gifts from family that you might not normally want to accept? So the first thing you want to look at is like, how can we slow the flow of toys and things coming into the house, right? And then the second thing you can do is just really engage the kids in the process. A couple of the things that I've liked to do in the past is sometimes I will rotate their toys. So I might have like a few different bins, right? And I find that when they have access to everything, they'll play with a couple things. But if I kind of switch things in and out, they're more likely to play with new things. And I also get a really good sense of what they're not playing with, right? So if I swap a bin and they suddenly have access to this new collection of toys, and a month or 2 months later, there's a bunch that haven't been played with, that's the first place that I want to start. We would sometimes put stuff in the garage. So like I would do the decluttering and pick out like, okay, well, I know you're never going to agree to get rid of this, but I know you're not using it. I'm going to put it in a box. I'm going to put that box in the garage. And if in 6 months, nobody is looking for or asking for this item, I get rid of it. So kids are really, really challenging. I find that a lot of our clutter definitely comes from our kids. So like I said, McDonald's toys, dollar spot visits, if you're getting stuff from birthday parties, I like to say no to things. Like we'll go places, where people are giving out Frisbees and this and that. Like if I don't think we're going to use it, I don't take it because I know it's going to end up in my kid's toy box. And it's just going to be one of those things that I try to get rid of in a couple months. So kids are very, very challenging, but you can lead by example and really just, don't give them access to everything. I think that makes a huge difference.
Okay, that's super helpful. I think even like the projects that they make, like right now, they're making this project.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like out of old boxes and sticks and string. And I'm like, well, what are you going to do with that when you're done? Like, I hate to just throw it away. So I'm probably part of the problem, but that's helpful.
That's a good point,
same
Megan.
with all their art projects, Megan, that come home from school. Like they painted at 2 years old and at 3-year-old,
Yep.
and you're like, you don't. But I'm like, yeah, when we moved into an RV, it's like, I cannot keep all this stuff. And so I just took some pictures of my favorites and but yeah, I know it's hard to get rid of the kids' stuff.
Yeah, documenting is huge, right? It's like Darcy said, take pictures. One of the things we did, and I forgot to mention this, is we set up email accounts for the kids. They don't have access to them, but like we'll take pictures of their artwork and email, write a little story about their day, or, we'll email those things to them. And then when they get older, we'll give them the links, the passwords to those email accounts. So they'll be able to go back and look at their artwork, but they don't need to physically have, macaroni necklaces and, wreaths made out of paper cups or whatever. And that stuff takes up a lot of space, but it's really the memory that's important of it. So if you can digitally document those things somehow, like I said, whether set up an email address or maybe set up a file on your computer of those pictures, you can retain those memories without feeling guilty about getting rid of the actual projects. Because I know that those are sometimes hard to get rid of.
I love that idea. Stinking genius.
Who else has questions? Nobody's asked questions about gift giving.
I think it's interesting, like we build up so many emotions with stuff. And just an example of that, my mom passed away like 8 years ago, but she loved decorating for Christmas. And I was personally just dreading going through all her Christmas decor that she, put so much time into packing away every single year. And so we finally did it like 3 or 4 years after she died. We drug everything out of storage, and I maybe kept 3 things. Like, I wasn't attached to anything. So we just make all this drama up in our heads and put it off and procrastinate. And it's like, I don't want any of this crap. So it's just crazy how it's really mental that we just think it's going to be a big issue and, oh, we can't part with it. And then when you look at it, you're like, I don't want any of this. Like, it doesn't bring the person back. So I kept a couple special things, but it was crazy how I just had all this drama in my head, and then I didn't want any of it. So it's a lot. And back on the kid stuff too, I am notorious. My kids are 10 and 12 now. I have always, like, when they were toddlers, I cleaned their rooms out with garbage bags when they weren't home, and they had no idea. They never asked, like, well, where's this? Like, I think we just, like, again, we don't want to take stuff away from them, but I love throwing things away. I donate and I throw things away. Megan, I'll help you when I come down there.
Better watch out. I'll put you to work.
I'll stay an extra day.
Okay, sounds good.
Gina, I would love to hear you talk about gift giving though. Like, how do we, if we're trying to battle this, like, battle the bulge inside our houses, right? Like, how do we manage that and help other people not collect too many things?
Yeah. So the first piece of advice is the one nobody likes, and it's, you have to be careful about the gifts that you give, right? So, like, we don't want people to give us unsolicited things that we don't want, but we are so often giving people things just to give them, right? Or out of like, oh, well, it's your birthday or it's a holiday, so I'm obligated to give you something. When we're giving people things, it's really hard to ask them not to give us things, right? Because of course they want to reciprocate. So I try not to give people things that are non-consumables, right? Like, if they can't eat it, drink it, or burn it, I don't give it. The other thing that I do for the kids is Amazon wish lists, right? Because there's certain times where gift giving is going to happen regardless, birthdays, Christmas. So just really being intentional about, like, these are the things that we need. These are the things that the kids want. If it's not on the list, like, don't buy it. So that's really hard sometimes having those conversations, because I think we all know people, especially moms and mother-in-laws tend to be chronic gift givers. So just really sometimes having those hard conversations and just saying, like, we don't want these things. Like, if you give us something that's not on the list, there's a chance that we're not going to keep it. People never like hearing that, but they're always more hesitant to give the gift that way. And then the other thing is, like, experiences are amazing gifts. And I love that we're starting to embrace that more as a culture, right? Like, whether it's a museum membership or an Audible membership, or you pack a picnic lunch and you bring a friend on a hike, right? Like, just creating these experiences. And, we have kids, that's really what kids want. Like, they want their aunt and uncle to take them to the movies and out for ice cream. Like, those are the things that they remember. So the more intentional we can be about giving those types of gifts, the more the people in our life are going to respond in that same way. And don't be afraid to say no, like when you have those hard things, or just, as holidays are coming up, hey, I know St. Patrick's St. Patrick's Day's coming up, Mom, like, please don't buy my kids a bunch of green crap at the dollar store. Like, they just don't need it. So sometimes having those tough conversations is important.
My least favorite thing is like the tchotchkes that you get at birthday parties, like like the gift bag of junk that just like collects around the corners of the bedrooms. So I like don't give gift bags at birthday parties. I don't really have birthday parties, but just because I don't want to put that on you. Like, I know how much I don't like it, so I don't want to put it on you.
Yeah. And one of the other things that we did before we left was we let the kids like pick a cause, or pick, my daughter, she wanted to support the rescue organization that we got our dog from. So for her birthday, I called the organization up. I got a list of all the stuff that they needed. And that's what we sent to people with her birthday invites. Like, please don't bring gifts, because kids' parties, you're bringing small gifts and stuff like that. And the kid ends up with a bunch of tchotchkes and random stuff at the end. So, when you tell people no gifts, they have a really hard time with that. So instead we were like, we're taking donations for this organization. Here are the items that they've asked for. And then when it was all said and done, my daughter got to actually bring the stuff to the animal rescue, and she got to take pictures. And so she got that experience of like gifting them some things that they needed. And that was really, really special for her. And we bought her the one thing that she really, really wanted for her birthday, and it was a success. So don't be afraid. I know when we first started this minimalism journey, I was really worried, like, are we depriving our kids? Like, they're not going to have as much stuff as their friends. And I think Darcy can attest to this, having kids in an RV, like the kids really appreciate things so much more when they don't get everything that they want, right? When they have a little bit less and it's all things that they really love, it just makes them more grateful, and it makes my life a lot easier. So don't be afraid to kind of pull in the reins. I know it can feel kind of counterproductive when you like us, like we would go crazy at Christmas time, and Christmas would be this big event. And so pulling things back felt a little bit like, oh no, how are they going to react? But truly they are so much happier with less stuff, and they do get things that they really, really want and need. And so it just makes our space happier. It makes everybody happier.
Yep, I completely agree. I mean, and they don't miss their stuff. They do not miss their stuff. And they play with the stuff that they have.
Yep. Anybody have any other questions?
Those are all the questions? Well, this was awesome.
Okay,
Gina.
one last one.
God.
Oh, how about mail? Like the hotspot pile that you come in the door, it's the mail, it's the keys, it's your husband's crap, all that.
So I used to have like a one-touch rule for mail, because paper clutter is huge. So I would always open my mail over the recycling bin, number one, and I would have a one-touch rule. So if it was a bill and I wasn't ready to pay it right that minute, I wouldn't open it. So if I'm opening something, I'm going to take care of it right here and now. And if not, then I'm not going to open it. So, you can turn on paperless, any type of option that you have for that, go and do that. You can try and take things digital, but at the end of the day, there's always junk mail. So just don't start piles, because that's when the piles move around. When we start putting things in piles, we've kind of already lost the battle. So really be mindful. Like I said, if you're going to open your mail, be prepared to handle it right then and there, or save it for another time, and then make sure that like things are going right in the recycling bin or on the fridge or wherever their final destination is. Don't keep moving things around if you can avoid it.
Has Tony always been kind of on board with you on the minimalist? Because I know my method of mail and my husband's method of mail are very different. And so just curious how you kind of do that.
Yeah, we both kind of started this journey together. I think I was probably a little bit more gung-ho than he was, but I think one of the challenges that we've had is like not to censor each other's decluttering. So if I'm going through stuff, or if he's going through his stuff and he gets rid of something and I'm like, oh, but I gave that to you, you're going to get rid of that? You don't want that, right? Like, I'm creating a problem for the process. So I think, you know, we all have our different ways of decluttering. Sometimes we go through different methods and deciding to get rid of stuff. But I think the important thing is to just be really respectful of, like, if they're willing to let go of something and they don't want it, I have to sort of relinquish control and just be happy that he's going through this process. And likewise, like, if I'm getting rid of something and it was something that he gave me, he needs to understand, like, this is not personal, this is part of our process. So we've really had to work through a little bit of that for sure, but it's just all
Sure.
about, you know,
Mine just really seems
communicating.
to like open the mail and the envelopes that they came in just like to stay, and it's just added garbage. So we're working through that. I like the one touch method though, like not opening it till you're ready to pay it I really like that, because then it just kind of stands out to you.
Yeah, paper clutter, I feel like, is one of those things that just can really get out of control real fast. And the next thing you know, you have like a huge pile of paper.
My mom is on this call.
So
and
anything you
she's-
can do to make that easier.
Yeah, she knows our bowl that we keep our things in.
I can't say I'm guilty of everything that you talked about tonight. Every single thing.
Me too. That's how I have these tips. I've done all of these things. And so
Yeah.
I've had to overcome these hurdles for sure.
I have to say, Tess helped me last summer when they were staying with us. One weekend we went through my cupboard and we got rid of 7 boxes of glassware. And that wasn't even my good stuff. We didn't even get through the
That wasn't
utensils.
even the stuff that was commonly used, but
No.
her mom, my grandmother, works at a thrift store and just is very commonly like, oh, I think they would like this, and doesn't ask, just brings, oh, I think you'd like this. And my mom does not like to hurt people's feelings, bless her heart. And so
Working
she
on
just
it.
keeps things. And I was like, nope. So we're both
Yeah.
working on it.
I was gonna say, there's a reason I'm on this call tonight, right, Tess?
Yep. Yeah, this was super awesome, Gina. Thank you so
Mhm.
much.
Very
Oh, of
good.
course. I'm happy to like share more tips, or if you're like running into some hurdles and you need someone
I'd
to
love
like
to see
go
that like
talk you through it.
30-day worksheet that you had mentioned. I don't know if we can like add that into Pink Drink Link, or I'd tag it to
Yeah,
like this
Gina, you could
call, or
probably put it
however.
in the comments. Yeah, of the live or of the post, either one.
That-
Though of the live might be helpful. Yeah.
I'd be
Yeah,
happy to
that would
share
be awesome.
I'd be happy to.
Well, awesome, friends. Thank you guys for tuning in and showing up and asking great questions. Thank you, Gina. That was so, so helpful. So helpful. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful rest of your night.